Hello, my friends. D.L. Anderson here. Welcome back to Transformation by Truth podcast as we share the truth concerning these last days and what you must do to save yourself from the violent times that are just ahead. Today's podcast is a word of truth accounting of the end times. The end is coming. The end is near. Today's podcast is entitled End Times 481, an intro to worship, part 2, the path you must follow to receive the presence of Elohim. The podcast objectives are reveal how we receive the presence of Elohim, analyze how Messiah is formed within the chosen elect, and reveal the fate of those who do not follow Messiah's example. Prepare your heart to receive his presence. Shalom, my beloved brothers and sisters, and welcome to day 341 of our exposition of lawlessness. In the most recent podcast, we began our intro to the critical degree of reverential fear. Enter worship. Now, in that podcast, we analyzed the primary requirements for engaging the Father in divine worship. Enter spirit and truth. At this time, I would like to continue that line of thought with the following treasure box. The requirements of spirit and truth, as it pertains to divine worship, require a pure heart. To wit, you cannot fulfill the requirements of spirit and truth if your heart is not pure. Ergo, we can unite the factors of spirit and truth into a single requirement. Vis-a-vis, you cannot engage the Father in divine worship without a pure heart. Now, we know this to be true because worship is the primary application of purification. Ergo, where there is no purification, there can be no worship. For the counter objective of purification is defilement, which is designed to disqualify your worship. My dear friends, you must believe me, Yahuwah will not receive the irreligious worship of carnal men and women who have defiled themselves with iniquity and sin. Quite the contrary, for Yahuwah is set apart, and thus those who worship him must also be set apart. And the primary marker of our set apartness is love, founded upon a sincere belief that flows out of a pure heart. 1 Timothy 1:5. Now, the goal of the command is love from a pure heart, from a good conscience, and a sincere belief. Now, in addition to the linear model of holiness, the reason why worship requires a pure heart is sure, and it has to do with a key facet of worship, which I'll offer to you as a revelation. This is one I suggest you bookmark and never forget. You cannot engage the Father in divine worship if your heart has not been prepared to receive his presence. Now, the key line in this revelation is his presence. To wit, I am not suggesting that Yahuwah Elohim in his completeness will come into your heart. Trust me, although this is common doctrine, it is most certainly not true. For if you came into contact with the Most High Elohim, his very presence would kill you. That being said, the question we should chiefly entertain is how do we prepare our hearts to receive his presence? And what manner of his presence are we about to receive? The answer is sure, and it is twofold. First and foremost, we receive his presence via his set apart spirit. Secondly, we receive his presence via his only brought forth son, Yahushua, Messiah. John 14:23 is revealing. Yahuwah answered him, if anyone loves me, he shall guard my word, and my Father shall love him, and we shall come to him and make our stay with him. Romans 8:9-11. But you are not in the flesh, but in the Spirit, if indeed the Spirit of Elohim dwells in you. And if anyone does not have the Spirit of Messiah, this one is not his. And if Messiah is in you, the body is truly dead on account of sin, but the Spirit is life on account of righteousness. And if the Spirit of him who raised Yahushua from the dead dwells in you, he who raised Messiah from the dead shall also give life to your mortal bodies through his Spirit dwelling in you. Now, let's keep going. Galatians 2:20. I have been impaled with Messiah, and I no longer live, but Messiah lives in me. And that which I now live in the flesh, I live by belief in the Son of Elohim, who loved me and gave himself for me. Galatians 4:19. My little children, for whom I am again in birth pains until Messiah is formed in you. Ephesians 3:14-19. For this reason, I bow my knees to the Father of our Master, Yahushua Messiah, that he might give you power to be strengthened in the inner man through his Spirit, that the Mashiach might dwell in your hearts through belief, having become rooted and grounded in love, in order that you might be strengthened to know the love of Messiah, which surpasses knowledge, in order that you might be filled to all the completeness of Elohim. Now, let's keep going. Colossians 1:26-28. The secret which has been hidden from ages and from generations has been revealed to his set apart ones, to whom Elohim desired to make known what are the riches of the esteem of this secret among the nations, which is Messiah in you, the hope of glory, whom we announce, warning every man and teaching every man in all wisdom, in order to present every man perfect in Mashiach Yahushua. Revelation 3:20. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I shall come into him and dine with him, and he with me. If Messiah lives inside of you. Now, the Ruach led me to share all these scriptures to validate the revelation I prior shared. To wit, you cannot engage the Father in divine worship if your heart has not been prepared to receive his presence via his Spirit and Yahushua Messiah. Now, the indwelling of the set apart Spirit should be clear by now, for we have addressed this matter in prior podcasts. To wit, we addressed it in the most recent podcast as a requirement for worship. For that reason, I would like to focus on how we receive the presence of Yahuwah Elohim in our hearts due to the intercessory work of Yahushua Messiah. And I will employ the scriptures from the prior section. Let's get started. Now, first of all, Yahushua is declaring, if anyone loves me, he shall guard my word, and my Father shall love him, and we shall come to him and make our stay with him. This begs the question, how does Yahuwah and Yahushua abide with those who guard his word? The answer is sure, vis-a-vis, by guarding his word, we are transformed into his spiritual standard. Here lies the inflection and the key. And as it is such a crucial and uncommon matter, I will offer it to you as a revelation. The spiritual standard of Yahushua Messiah is contained within the Ruach of Elohim, which is dwelling within us. Therefore, as we are led by the Spirit into all truth, that is, the standard of Yahushua Messiah, for he is the truth, we are gradually transformed into the image and likeness of Yahushua Messiah. To wit, he is formed within us. My dear friends, this is why Shaul wrote the Galatians saying, "My little children, I am in birth pains until Messiah is formed in you." It is because Shaul understood that our transformation into the spiritual standard of Yahushua Messiah allows us to receive the presence of Yahuwah Elohim. Not only this, but Shaul also knew that we could not be transformed into his spiritual standard without the Ruach of Elohim. Why? It's because the Ruach contains the blueprint for the standard. You can see this by observing the image to the left. To wit, the 16 degrees of perfection constitute the spiritual standard of Yahushua Messiah, and they are all contained within the Ruach of Elohim. And as you go on to perfection, unlocking the power of each degree, Yahushua Messiah is formed within you. This is what it means to follow his example. This is what it means to guard his word of truth. Now, you'll know when and if Yahushua is being formed within you because Shaul is revealing, I have been impaled with Messiah, and I no longer live, but Messiah lives in me. Here lies a key inflection I ask you to consider faithfully. If Yahushua Messiah lives inside of you, then you will gradually look more like him and less like the man or woman you were at the beginning of your quest. Now, that was the inflection. Here is the problem. To wit, many who claim to have the Ruach of Elohim don't look anything like Yahushua Messiah. Not only this, but many of them don't even look like their former selves. Quite the contrary, they are even worse off. Vis-a-vis, they are lesser individuals as it pertains to spiritual quality, and their lives do not reflect the life of abundance that was promised to those who follow the example of Yahushua Messiah. And we know why. It's because A, they aren't following his example, and B, there are only two long-term states in the spiritual sphere. Enter progression and regression. That's all, folks, and I have told you this often before. Now, those who are not following the example of Yahushua Messiah will find themselves trapped in a vicious cycle of persistent regression. Ergo, every aspect of their life will reflect the downward spiral of persistent regression. Not only this, but because these individuals are desperate, devastated, and dying, their hearts have become cold. And we know why. It's because they are separated from the love of Elohim. For Shaul reveals that Yahushua Messiah is not in their hearts. Ergo, they do not possess the hope of glory. And this is why they will not have everlasting life. For when Yahushua Messiah stood at the door and knocked, they would not let him in. And thus, he who raised Messiah from the dead will not give life to their mortal bodies. They will die in their sin. That said, we must continue analyzing the role Yahushua Messiah plays in our ability to receive the presence of Elohim. Only then will we be able to engage him in divine worship as a testament to the truth that we do indeed possess the hope of glory. Now, here is the final word. Time is always of the essence, and the time is now to receive his presence. Brothers and sisters, hear me carefully as I say, every day we draw nearer to the time of the great distress. And trust me, this is no time to be operating outside of his Ruach and outside of his presence. My dear friends, you must believe me. Your reality today will be your reality tomorrow. To wit, if you're not experiencing the presence of the Most High Elohim today, do not be deceived. You will not experience his presence during the great distress. Here lies the inflection and the problem. To wit, you will not be guarded during the great distress if you have not prepared yourself to receive his presence in the current season. Now, this speaks to many of the parables Yahushua Messiah taught his disciples, past and present, specifically the parable of the 10 virgins. To wit, the 5 wise virgins in this day are preparing their hearts and their minds to receive the presence of Elohim. Why? It's because we know that the sealing of these set apart ones is coming to an end. And those who fail to obtain the seal of Elohim in the current season will not be guarded during the next. Quite the contrary. For while they were sleeping on Yahuwah in this season, they all became casualties to the great distress. Heretofore, I recommend open your eyes, brothers and sisters, and behold, the Savior stands, and at every door he knocks. And yet, time is ticking, his arrow is bent, and every man is on the clock. So, tick tock, my friends, tick tock. Now, here is today's assignment. Meditate on all the lessons you have heard this week and ask the Father to give you clarity on anything you are struggling to receive. And if you are led, please feel free to reach out to me. You can fill out a form on our website and let us know what questions you have. And remember, the only question that can truly hurt you is the one you fail to ask. Last but not least, enjoy the upcoming Shabbat and the weekend, and be ready to get back at it next week as we continue to make our calling and election sure in pursuit of the precious and priceless seal of Elohim. Now, here is what's next. We completed today's podcast, End Times 481, and Intro to Worship, Part 2. And the next podcast is entitled End Times 482, and Intro to Worship, Part 3. I'll post this podcast on Monday, June 9th, 2025. Until then, my friends, continue to be led by the Spirit of Elohim, continue to watch, continue to pray, continue in fasting, and most of all, continue to be focused, for the end is coming. The end is near.